Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Welcome to Living the Gospel of Life. I'm your host, Leticia Velasquez, and as always, we're going to start with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. O Mary, bright dawn of the new world, Mother of the living, to you do we entrust the cause of life. Look down, O Mother, upon the vast numbers of babies not allowed to be born, of the poor whose lives are made difficult, of men and women who are victims of brutal violence, of the elderly and the sick killed by indifference or out of misguided mercy. Grant that all who believe in your Son may proclaim the gospel of life with honesty and love to the people of our time. Obtain for them the grace to accept that gospel as a gift ever new, the joy of celebrating it with gratitude throughout their lives, and the courage to bear witness to it resolutely, in order to build, together with all people of goodwill, the civilization of truth and love, to the praise and glory of God, the Creator and Lover of life. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. I'm very proud to interview today Robert Fernandez. He is the head of Herald Entertainment. Herald Entertainment is an internationally award-winning production house that specializes in family-friendly and faith-based productions, most notably the popular Brother Francis animated series for Catholic children, and most recently the theatrically released feature, The Pilgrim's Progress. Welcome, Robert, to our program.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a blessing to accompany you during this time.
Thank you. We're hearing lots about children's media these days in the news and how they're getting politically involved. So I thought it would be nice to present a children's media company that we can believe in, that believes in family-friendly films and seems to abide by that. So tell me about Herald Entertainment, and first of all, tell me about yourself and what brought you to Herald Entertainment.
Well, Herald is, we're an animated, a company that works in animated, both films and series, and we also publish a lot of books. And I'm one of the founders of the studio. We initiated it about 19 years ago. Those of us that started it had backgrounds in media and had some sort of mission background, and so it was something that we felt very called to. It's really, for me, it's more like a calling. And although Herald is not a religious company, it's a for-profit company that produces, like I said, films and cartoons and all that. We do abide by our strong convictions that whatever we create would have some sort of benefit, primarily in the lives of children. I mean, we're blessed with results that a lot of parents and grandparents and older people, including teenagers and everything, really like our stuff, even though it's directed to kids. And I think that's just one of these things that when you do things well, and you're transmitting a certain message and all that, it resonates with a lot of people. But we do feel particularly called to young viewers. And sadly, it's not like a lot of people are doing that within the faith-based community. A lot of people in the faith-based community are really gearing a lot of stuff to adults, and I think that's great and that's wonderful because there's a great need. But for us in particular, I think it's more of a calling to little minds. And part of what our slogan that we go by, our motto here is that we respect little children, we respect their souls, and we know that they have souls.
I really like
that.
Say that again. You respect their souls. Oh
yeah,
my God! There's so many children's companies that want to warp their souls, but you respect their souls. And the fact that's just amazing.
Well, and it's not just the cliche of that they're little sponges, even though they are, but it's also more that they can understand. They're capable of understanding spiritual principles and concepts what they may not understand is the vocabulary, but it doesn't mean that they don't understand or that they can't be deep in their faith. They actually can be, and you can see that in the Bible, and you can see that in the tradition of the church, where people were called at a young age and developed a relationship with God at a young age, and showed the way that God was working in their lives by the fact that they just basically drew closer to God. So that's, like I said, even though we're not a religious company, we are involved with a lot of faith-based material.
It's very important to have that underpinning of respect for children's ability to understand the spiritual, because even a secular entertainment can have a spiritual bent, if you know what I mean. And I have homeschooled my kids. I'm an educator myself, so I was always trying to steer my kids away from things that had an undercurrent that was destructive to their souls, whether it be anti-parent or anti the nation of their birth, or the sense that the child should seek magic in themselves to conquer everything. There's a lot of those themes running through secular entertainment. And, not everything that touches a child can affect them for life, but a steady diet will. And if parents wonder why their kids lost their faith, look at what they're looking at 24/7. And it's not the parent. Think of the amount of minutes, and it is minutes. I think it was 21 minutes that the average parent interacts with their kids during the day, and the screen time goes into tens of hours. And these are strangers, so you better make sure that the strangers that your kids are interacting with are going to be for their benefit.
And I think even
we have to watch what world they're seeing, especially at a young age.
Yeah. Well, and going further on that same theme, we have to also realize that that entrance or that link into the media world is becoming more available to kids. I mean, 2 years old, 3 years old, as soon as they're given access to their parents' tablet or mobile phones or whatever. And I've seen this with kids. It's amazing what
2-year-olds can access, and it's terrifying. Yeah. What's the statistic on the preschoolers seeing pornography? It's absolutely horrifying. That they stumble.
Well, the kids, even though they can't read, some of the kids can't read. They can recognize icons on, the apps on a mobile device, and therefore they can access YouTube and they can access all these different things, and they learn how to swipe a screen at a very young age and how to get to their favorite programs and all that. But that doesn't mean that they're always that they're kept safe.
That's
from
right.
Once they're in that world. I mean, there are so many bad influences that are out to try to get them. I mean,
yes, there are people that are deliberately trying to expose them to pornographic content, hiding behind seemingly innocent children's things that pop up, and I've heard these things. So as a mother of a 17-year-old with Down syndrome who's frequently on social media and also YouTube, Netflix, all that, I'm very aware of that, and I'm trying to constantly monitor. And no matter how many safeguards you have, they find a way around them. I remember the day, you'll laugh, but when my kids were growing up, that we had these seminars on the Internet, and they told us to have one computer screen in a place where everyone can see it. Those days are down the tube, right? Everywhere, several screens, and they can see them anywhere, anytime, and we've got to do our best to counteract that as parents, limit what they see, but also put in the good. And that's why I'm talking to Robert today of Herald Entertainment. So let's talk about your lineup, the different programs you have.
Well, we do. We were just talking before this program about the trilogy that we produced about 2 years ago. That's called. It's three films. One is called God With Us, The Messengers, and To Every Nation, which is really, the first one is the gospel of Christ, and that's a 90-minute feature. It's fully animated, really great quality. traditional animation. We've got it. I can't remember how many languages we actually have that in. Which, by the way, everything that we produce, we always produce in English, Spanish.
Awesome.
And then we have Arabic, we have French, we have Korean, Portuguese, and so on. And so that particular series, and then the next two on that series is basically the Book of Acts. It goes from the ascension of Christ to the conversion of the birth of the church, Pentecost, the persecution of the church, all the way to the conversion of St. Paul. And then the third one goes from the conversion of St. Paul to his martyrdom. And so that's the book of the Acts of the Apostles. And if you're looking for something that's going to inspire conviction, these are great. I mean, we get a lot of people that have been using these in high school. This is not the gospel of the man that went everywhere doing good and sort of, soft and just wonderful. I mean, a lot of that is there. But it's really the story of what it costs to follow Christ,
Really? I can't wait to see it. That's amazing.
It's really good. And we've gotten,
adolescents love role models that had it hard. Because adolescents, especially in this country, it's really difficult, especially if you have a Christian worldview. I know that I suffered in public school, and these kids need to know that Christ was there.
Yeah.
And he suffered.
Yeah.
He died. We know that, but we need to really know it,
Yeah. And that his life was, it's a gutsy life. I mean, and these people that he called to follow him, that were willing to leave everything and willing to suffer and all that. It's not a soft little calling to become a Christian. It's a high calling with a lot of honor and a lot of trials and difficulties, but with a lot of wonderful things that go along with it as well. But anyway, that particular series is great. And we've got several others that, people can see on our website and on our store and so on. But I think the one that would probably resonate a lot within the Catholic community is our Brother Francis series, which that kind of goes in part with my, with my journey. I think we're on like episode 18, 19 right now, and that's grown to be a major thing for our studio, where we have not only the full episodes of Brother Francis, now we're putting the Catechism of Brother Francis, we're doing mini stories, digital books, apps, and so on and so forth, to try to get good content with good quality. That's the other thing, is we really try to do things with good quality out to the Catholic community. But part of it, the idea was partly born from the fact that I grew up Catholic, but unfortunately in my situation, I think the formation that I got wasn't great, even though I was, an altar boy and the whole thing. But there was just a lot of stuff that I didn't understand. And even though I asked a lot of questions, it wasn't like it was really explained to me. It was a bit sad, and that kind of affected me during, a long time in my life. But when I began having a relationship with God, and then at one point I was traveling and I met Mother Teresa when I was working on this other project, and
wow,
I met her in Calcutta, and it was during the time that I was there that got me really thinking about things. And as I was working in media, because I pretty much always worked with media, I kept thinking about this character, Brother Francis, and I kept thinking about, if I went through all these different things as a kid, and I had all these questions, what about other kids,
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny because it's not like a lot of people were really thinking about producing something for Catholic kids. Especially in my world. Even to produce something for the faith-based community is still a little bit like, well, if you're out there. And then when you're going into the Catholic world, it's like, what for? That was
and yet these people seem to forget that Passion of the Christ, one of the best-selling films in a dead language all over the world. Hello.
Well, but this was
from Pure Return. Did it make 600 million? 600 million? Am I right?
Yeah.
Come on, you can forget that. I thought Sony started a brand of pictures. What is it? The faith-based Sony.
Sony Faith. Well, after the Passion, most of the major studios started faith divisions,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of it was geared to. Well, actually, most of it was geared to movies, and kind of to adult themes and stuff like that, not so much for kids.
Right.
But anyway, so we produced the first one, and the first one was all about prayer, and it was all about memorized prayer and how you can rattle off prayer without meaning it and fall asleep, and it was actually kind of funny. But we did it with really good quality animation, with CGI animation and using a variety of mediums. And we decided to duplicate it and distribute it and see how it was going to be received. And it was really received very well by the general public. It was amazing. There were a lot of people that wrote in that just loved it, and it resonated with them, with the adults, with the parents.
Fantastic.
And with the kids too, because it was fun. It had songs and all that, but the quality was what people kept talking about, was the quality of both the production, but also the quality of the content. That it was, some people call it like theology for kids, and that's what it is. Mm-hmm. And so we followed it up with another one called The Bread of Life, which is all about the Eucharist. And we had some great segments in there. We had this one parable, the parable of the vine, when Jesus talks about how we have to abide in him and so on and so forth. So we had that as part of the Eucharist. And the way we did that particular parable is we created these two animated grapes that were talking to each other. And one was sawing itself off the vine, and the other one was trying to tell, I don't think you should do that. And until it starts withering and falls off and dies. And it was funny, to the point that when we were showing it around, a lot of the parents were just cracking up. And so that went from one thing to another, and it just it started becoming a bit of a phenomenon within the Catholic community, where people that and still a lot of people don't know about it, but people that started learning about it and seeing about it they were the ones that were actually, like, we didn't pay any marketing. These are people that just started talking to other people and telling them about it. And it started to grow to the point that we had to open up a warehouse and start doing shipping and,
all this is Brother Francis? Sort of because of Brother Francis? Oh, that's great. By the way,
the Brother Francis brand.
My daughter graduated Franciscan University, my second daughter. Both of them graduated. And I always look at their bookstore as a sign of what's cutting edge, and Brother Francis was there. The latest. They always seem to have the latest and greatest of any Catholic media, mostly books, but also audio and video recordings. And they had Brother Francis on the shelf. So I got to look into that. When I saw your name on LinkedIn and that you was Herald, it sort of rang a bell. So, yeah, it's penetrating the market, and hopefully this will help even more, because it is very high quality. I've seen it, and I'm very impressed that you found a way to do solid doctrine in a way that doesn't insult anybody's intelligence. But there's nothing wrong with cracking a joke. The two grapes, one's trying to sell himself, because that's us, right? Trying to saw ourselves off the vine, thinking we're smarter than God. We need to abide. We're laughing at our own silliness, really. And it's great that adults can also relate to it. When I was teaching religious education, I was teaching a First Communion class to Spanish-speaking kids, but they were in American schools. I often found their parents coming to class, and I started to sort of teach to both of them, because they, living in obscure rural areas, maybe didn't get the best catechesis either. So I used a lot of media, but there wasn't a whole lot available. This is back about 10 years ago. I used Jesus of Nazareth, like the segment that would pertain to the scripture we were reading that chapter. And it helped a lot to have something visual. And the parents were very engaged as well. And you're right, a good quality film, animated or not, will engage the parents as well. And they won't find themselves drifting off. They'll be engaged as well. And then the great thing is then the parents and kids can have the discussion about it during the day, which even drives it home even more. Maybe the parents can give a little witness about how this was something in their lives that they needed to learn. And they fell asleep during the rosary one time, where they thought it was Hail Mary full of grapes. Most kids, you mislearn the word. And it makes it real for the kids, because it's very important for them to see their parents living the faith. And it's great that they can watch these films with them. It's a good start. So that's fantastic that had its own organic growth. So you started this, Brother Francis, how many years ago?
Brother Francis was about, I say about 9 years ago or something along those lines.
And now you're on like
and we started
26
slow.
episodes?
Yeah.
Wow.
We're on the 19th episode, but
19th.
What happened was that it started very slow, and then when we started getting a lot of demand for it, then we had to start upping the production. But we started introducing not just more half-hour episodes, but we started introducing digital content as well. Like, we started getting into apps, into augmented reality, and we started doing audio. We started doing books, coloring books, readers, and now we're actually doubling up production.
Wow.
As we speak. But it's interesting that we have gotten, and we get a lot of people engage with us on social media, engage with us on a day-to-day basis on the reactions of the families, and they're starting to be used in adult formation programs as well.
Wow.
In fact, a few years back, I was in Spain visiting one of our distributors, and he said, "Well, these cloistered nuns, they're really fans of Brother Francis, and they want to see you." And so we went. I can't remember where it was.
You're fans in the cloister, huh?
Yeah. And so I got invited to go in there, and I was in this room, and of course you're separated by like a screen.
Mm-hmm.
So I sat there in the middle with the distributor, and then they opened up the screen, and here the nuns come out, and I would say there's about 10 of them or 12, and they're all coming out singing the theme of the Brother Francis series. And a few of them had the guitars, and then the others, each one of the others was holding like a DVD or a coloring book or a book or something, and they actually sang the entire theme. They sang the theme song, and then I stayed there talking to them for about an hour. Went out, have some lunch, and then they invited me to come back in for some coffee, and just chatted with them. And they were telling me that they had started using our materials for the novices. Because even though they were geared for kids and everything, they were very simple, that they were very packed. And they are. I mean, if you ever watch some of the stuff that we do, as I told you at the beginning, it's, we really try to respect kids' souls. So we don't, I mean, they're fun, they're engaging, but they're definitely packed with a lot of stuff. We're working right now on a new series of books for kids called Let's Learn About, and we're just working on the one that's Learn About Lent. That's going with the Lent series that we're doing from Brother Francis for next year. And we work with consultants as well, because we want to make sure that all our stuff is correct and sound and so on.
Good.
Theologically sound and all that. And so one of our consultants got back and says, he goes, I've done a lot of reading on a lot of the books that are out there for kids Lent, and because this is really complete. And so we're thrilled with that. We present it in a way that, like I said, is fun and is engaging. And I think it may be the way sort of the combination of visuals and colors and everything that we use is along with the way the content is presented just kind of resonates with people. So what's happening is, I do feel that within the community worldwide, that there is a hunger for good and spiritual things, and maybe in some ways God's using us to be able to meet that hunger, and that's why it's been going so well.
Absolutely. There's starvation, spiritual starvation out there.
Yeah.
And
exactly
sometimes among people in the church who, I don't know about you, but I was in first grade in 1967. So the catechetical content there was so thin. I remember reading through my first grade catechism book, God is Love, God is Love, every single chapter, every single week. I'm like, come on, They're not presenting it with any depth. So it's really just a catchphrase. God is love. Well, what does that mean? Well, if you show the life of Christ and the sacrifice and the love, then you understand it. But you just repeat it and show pictures of butterflies and grass growing, it doesn't mean anything to the kids. It was absolutely paper-thin shallow, and no wonder kids got turned off. I remember one catechism class, every single time the boys would get the teacher engaged in talking about baseball, because it was so much more interesting than our catechism. It happened every single week, and I got really frustrated because I actually wanted to learn. Now, if she'd had some better quality materials, it might have been, or maybe a film or two, it might have been easier to keep those boys engaged. Instead of, okay, we'll stay here till we're confirmed, and then we're out of here, right? And that's such a common experience for so many people. And they never met the Christ of the Gospels in all those years of catechism. It's a tragedy, really, and someday we're going to have to answer for it. I'm so glad that you are providing a response and that you're connecting. That makes me so happy.
Well, it is however it worked out and however God led us to it. It is something that is working, and we're like I said, we're doubling up our production right now. We're not going to be doing less. We're actually going to be doing more. And we're going to be letting more and more people know, especially in Facebook and our social media. And if people visit our site, they could sign up for our newsletters and for all stuff. We do a lot of free stuff that we give away every month. And there's a lot of resources.
I was checking that out. There's no free stuff. Lots of coloring pages, very nicely drawn. Not overly simplistic, where there's two eyes and no mouth on the figures. No, it's realistically drawn, yet simple enough for the youngest child to color. As an educator, I recommend them as a catechist. Definitely very well done.
Yeah, the Brother Francis site, too, has, we have a place where the kids can go play. There's a couple little simple digital games and everything, but we're definitely planning on doing much more. In fact, over the last couple of weeks, we've been in meetings about all the new stuff that's going to be coming out. And I think probably within the next 3 to 4 months, we hope people are going to be pleasantly surprised with all the new things that are going to be available online. And the new episode that's going into production right now has to do with the kingdom, the kingdom, and what is the kingdom, and how is the kingdom in our hearts, and how do we establish the kingdom here? And it's really fun. It's going to be great. It starts off with, knights and a dragon and everything at the very beginning. Really cool, fun animation, but it's got a great
that's a very
message.
Popular theme, knights and dragons. Knights and dragons are very popular right now. But they forgot that it came from Christian medieval literature, that we invented it. So we can't let paganism take it all over. It belongs to Christendom, actually. What's the name of the app that you have? If I were looking in the App Store.
I believe the one that's there right now is it's called A is for Angel. There's a few others that are in the works right now, but I think that's the one that's there. Since this thing has grown, I'm getting more and more involved with production itself, and then there's other people here that are handling everything that has to do with the website. So I may not be as up to date on all that as they would be.
Okay.
But if you go there on the website, you're going to see a lot of that stuff. And then if people log on to the Facebook page, Brother Francis, on Facebook, they're going to be they'll be getting all the notices, all the time, and links to the blogs and all that.
Updates to your newest productions, etc.
Yeah, and like I said, there's always something. I mean, if it's not every week, there's always something every couple of weeks. And definitely a lot of free resources and all that. But there'll be a lot more coming out in the next few months because we're working on a new platform to make things available to more people. So we're definitely looking towards the future and, the future of the Brother Francis brand and so on. And the other thing that's kind of interesting is, what we do at Herald, apart from, we've spoken about the Gospel and the Book of Acts trilogy, and then, of course, the Brother Francis brand, which is very big. But we're also, in productions with a lot of other things, like Jesus stories, which are meant for really young kids. They're more like 8-minute episodes on the parables. There's another one called Ryan the Frady Secret Agent, which is not religious teaching like Brother Francis, but it's just good, wholesome entertainment with biblical principles. And we've done more and more other series and other types of productions because we also get a lot of requests. Sadly, in many families, or in some families, I should say, rather, sometimes, the people have gotten away from faith. And we do get a lot of people like grandparents that are trying to do something to be able to reach their grandkids, but their kids won't allow them to give something that's extremely religious.
Yeah.
And so they want kind of something that's intermediate, but still going to be good for the kids. So we've also produced other types of series that will help meet that need, so that there are alternatives. I mean, Brother Francis is definitely, Catholic teaching.
Right.
But then you've got other things that are still wholesome, they're still good, they have biblical principles, that are not as heavy-handed, if you want to call it that. And
I think that would compare to VeggieTales. I remember going to see Jonah, which was very popular in the theaters, and a family walking out because it took them, I think, 20 minutes to figure out this was about the Book of Jonah. And they didn't realize the VeggieTales were religious, so they probably were consuming them without realizing. So maybe some of the lessons were reaching their heart without realizing they were getting it pretty much from the Bible. So sometimes you have to be a little surreptitious, right, to be able to reach. And maybe the parents will soften a little bit when they see it's not making a big negative effect on their children to see something with a Christian content.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it.
Anyway,
it's very true, but very sad. I was just listening to EWTN, and Father Pack was talking to somebody whose daughter left the faith, and she's heartbroken. And everybody knows somebody. Everybody's got that situation. And the hardest thing, I think, is to see the grandchildren growing up with no faith when you're dying to show it to them. So that's really compassionate of you guys to come up with an alternative.
Yeah, well, one other thing too is, there are several different, expos and conventions and things like that take place throughout the year in different parts of the U.S., and we usually try to attend. And that's one of the places that we really listen to people. We ask them, okay, what do you need? We talk to a lot of teachers, a lot of religious ed teachers and parents, grandparents, and then periodically we just put out a question out there on Facebook and say, what do you guys want next? And we really do listen, and we really do take into consideration what people's needs are. We by no means do we.
That's right. That's why it's from a marketing point of view, but also spiritual.
Yeah, these are the people that are working with kids, and we're not in that situation. We're producers. We can get things done, and we can make it. And I think maybe God's given us a bit of a gift along those lines, to be able to know how to do it. But
I can see that.
We have to listen to everybody else that's working with the kids. We have to listen to the people, to the parents, and we have to listen to the kids as well, and try to provide what is needed and to make their lives easier. So. Yeah, whether it's a Brother Francis or some of these other things that we've worked on. But I can say, with real confidence that, what we do produce and we put out there, we do it with our whole hearts. And it's, I believe there's just something in everything, like in art, that the Holy Spirit, if it's dedicated to God, the Holy Spirit just seems to use images and visuals and things like that to be able to get a message across.
Especially as we're all screen addicts, everything has to be visual. And as a mother of a special needs daughter, obviously she's a visual learner. And I'm going to tell you a quick story about Christina. When she was 7, we weren't sure that she knew what prayer was. She has profoundly Down syndrome, but she has profound developmental delays. She's practically nonverbal. So when she was 7, I was reluctant to let her receive Holy Communion because I didn't know if she knew she was receiving Jesus, or just, as one kid put it, I want a cracker. And I wanted to make sure that my daughter, none of us can truly understand it, but I wanted to know she was somewhere on the continuum. So she would be pointing to the Eucharist in her mouth, like, I want to receive like Mommy. And so one day we found out, sadly, my mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And I got off the phone, and my daughter heard the conversation. Again, I don't know what she understood, but she immediately goes I was nonverbal at that point because I couldn't speak to God. I wasn't on speaking terms. She goes over to the statue of Our Lady of Grace, which was outside. We never prayed there. We always prayed inside for whatever reason. And she knelt down, made the sign of the cross, and starts talking to Our Lady about Grandma in broken words, but I knew what she was talking about intently. And she had her eyes squished shut and bent over her little bent hands, and she kept looking up at her as if to say, "You getting this?" Like she was having a conversation. And Mommy and Grandma, everybody's name came up. And then when she ended the sign of the cross, got up and put her arm around the statue like you've seen John Paul in the statue of Our Lady of Fatima, that holy huddle, like, okay, we got this. She walked off without a care in the world. And I said, my goodness, this kid's leading the family in entrusting my mother to Our Lady, and she took her home 4 months later. But here's a 7-year-old that we didn't think understood anything about prayer, showing us what prayer is all about, and in total confidence and total entrustment. And it was just amazing. So I learned very quickly that my example of prayer was picked up by my daughter, and she couldn't explain to me what prayer was, but she had seen it in action, and she picked it up. So that's why I think the media is so important, because observation is a large part of learning in childhood. And although you do have it translated into many languages, it's a universal language, the visual. And also, good music. Good music can be can really help a message enter the heart. It's another means of learning.
We've also gotten a lot of communications from people who have special needs children, who have said that these materials, these productions, are really resonate with the kids. I think there's a combination of things. Of course, like we're saying, the music, the songs, the visualizations that impacts them, but they also seem to be able to walk away with something that they understand. And to the point that we've even discussed here, we've had several people call us and say, look, is there any way, can we put some of these in a certain format that is specifically geared to special needs kids? And we're looking into communicating with some of these parents to say, well, what is it that you need, and what can we add to make it more, to meet more the need that you have?
I'd be happy to be responsive in that respect once I get my daughter seeing some of these films, and to let you know my observations, what worked best. That's very
good. Yeah, and I think we're also, we'd definitely be interested in anything else that has to do with other types of materials that can be used. So, yeah, we listen. We really take all these things to heart, but I've had several conversations with parents that are living that, and they're always very grateful. Tiger's saying, can you do more? Can you do? But we wanted to listen. We want to hear at what specifically are the principal needs.
Well, I'll give you an example of a movie that my daughter really loves. Is The Star, the animated film came out a couple of years back from Sony, I believe, about the Nativity. She loves the fact that it's animal-based, and the animals are the main characters. Disney does that often, too. She really relates to animals for some reason, and anytime she sees a donkey, she calls him Bo. And we weren't able to get the gear for the movie. It wasn't that, economically feasible to do, the gear that goes with the movie. But boy, any donkey she saw, that was Bo, and it didn't matter. And that's the main character. And so that might be a suggestion. I know you have Carlos the caterpillar. I've seen that. And my other daughter, when she was young, she's not special needs, but she absolutely loved the caterpillar and Jonah. That was one of her favorites. And sometimes it can touch them in a way that human characters can't. And, the donkey that carried Jesus, his mother, on his back, is a way of getting to Jesus. And that might be one way that would be interesting. But tell us a little about your spiritual journey when you left the Catholic faith and then returned to it. And this Herald Entertainment was an outgrowth of that, am I right?
Yes. Well, the thing is that, as I said, I grew up in a Catholic household, and went to Catholic schools all my life, was an altar boy and a whole bit. And to me, I was hungry. I was actually very spiritually hungry, and I had questions. But unfortunately, in the school and the parish that I was in, they didn't seem to quite understand how a young kid would want to know more. It was kind of like, well, yeah, you can be an altar boy and everything, but there wasn't a lot of explanation or anything. And so, yeah.
And there was very limited places for you to seek it. I remember as a high school kid, there was no more religious ed, and I had a lot more questions like you did, and I went into the library, and I saw books like Jesus Was Gay in the 70s, and I'm like, no. So I fortunately, I discovered C.S. Lewis, so I wasn't too far off base, and I was able to read a lot of C.S. Lewis, who didn't bring me very far from the Catholic faith at all. And but there's other kids that are searching, and they find all the wrong places, and they go astray because they're looking for God, and their heart is always hungry. St. Augustine says, "Their hearts are hungry until they rest in Thee." Right, and by the way, you have a saints series, and that's important too, because in the 70s we were very poor for saints. There was no explanation of the saints. I had a very old book, Lives of the Saints. Maybe you remember, it was a classic, but it was very dry.
Yeah.
And it was hard to get excited about that. So the fact that you have St. Augustine, St. Patrick, who else? What other saints' lives do you have?
Well, we actually did 2 animations, one on St. Perpetua, which is a very beautiful story. A lot of people are not familiar with her, but the DVD is amazing. And we actually did a half-hour animation on her story that we got a lot of great comments on. And then we did a 1-hour documentary that was filmed on location in Tunisia, where she was killed in the arena. We actually filmed it there among the ruins and the whole thing. It's amazing.
Wow.
So we have both the documentary and we have the animation. And we also did the same thing with St. Augustine. We did a half-hour animation on the story of St. Augustine and his conversion. And then we did a 1-hour documentary that was also filmed in Tunisia, Milan, and Rome. That really brings, that's a beautiful one because, St. Monica's involved with that one as well. And so that resonates with parents that are praying for kids.
Right.
And right now, we're working on St. Patrick animation. But we do have books. We do have what we call the Holiday Saints books, which is St. Patrick, St. Valentine, and St. Nicholas, which are the saints that most people celebrate without knowing why.
That's right, and that's very important too. To go back to the Christian roots. I'd like to even see you do one on All Hallows Eve, and to bring back devotion to the Holy Souls in Purgatory and the Saints, All Saints Day, and to see where Halloween came from. And that would be an interesting thing to do as well, because most kids don't know, why do we have All Saints Day right after Halloween? Well, they are connected. And there's an important reason. And even tied into, there's a lot of interest in media now about the Dia de los Muertos of the Mexicans, the Day of the Dead. It had pagan origins, but it was Christianized. And what do Mexicans really believe about that day? Might be an interesting way to go into it. It's great to show multicultural Catholicism, because in the future, the Catholic Church is going to be mostly non-European. Mostly African, Latin American, and Asian, really, the way it's growing.
Yeah, and if you look at a lot of the Brother Francis DVDs, we also take that into consideration a lot. It's very multi-ethnic and all that. But we do have an episode of Brother Francis called The Saints, and it really emphasizes their involvement in our life.
Beautiful.
Now, who they are and how they're. We call them. Actually, we have a series of holy cards of the saints, but we call them our heavenly friends. And we also have a series, I think it's like 5-volume series of coloring storybooks, so that the kids can color, but then on the opposite side of the page it has a resume of like a summary of their story. Flashcards as well on the saints, and we're actually starting.
That's a great idea, like baseball cards for saints, yeah.
Yeah, and so we're also starting a series that will go into production in about a month on the saints. That will be
nice.
It's going to be very nice animation and everything, but that's a series that we're hoping to do. But anyway, as far as getting back to my story and all that, so
Yes.
eventually when I was about 14, I had a very strong personal encounter with the Lord that really changed my life. But because I couldn't find anything within the church that would really help me out, I actually started going to the Protestant church and belonged to, Protestant church for years and years and years and years and years, and kind of grew up in that. That's what got me more into the Bible and so on. But it came to a point where my hunger was a great hunger in my heart, and the thing that was very different within the Protestant denominations and everything was that it's so dependent on the particular preacher or the teacher or what's happening that day or what's happening. And so it got to a point, and I think it's a bit of a problem right now where it's become more of a bit of a entertainment a little bit in some cases. And what I was really longing for at that time was a way that I can kind of worship God and really love God. And so what I didn't, as a kid, I hate to say this, but it's true. As a kid, I just, there was, the whole, ritual of the Mass and everything was something that I just couldn't get into, is what actually really brought me back. And then the encounter that I had with Mother Teresa when I was in Calcutta, where I did an interview with her for a documentary that I was working on, and just the way that she was, the way that she replied, the way that she would talk, and he left a lasting impression, and it got me really going back to the roots of the Bible and really praying and saying, okay, God, what am I, where am I going with, what's with my life? And it was around that time that God started actually working in my life at the same time to gear me towards the establishing of this company. So it was a journey that kind of went hand in hand. And because I was working on a series called The Torchlighters, which we still do. That's all about Christian heroes, real-life Christian heroes, like half-hour animations and one-hour documentaries. So I was traveling all over the world and filming these things and producing these things. And some of the ones that we did had to do with the early church. And because of that, I had to do a lot of reading on the early church. And the more I read about the early church, the more I realized how linked it was to Catholic tradition, and that got me very much into Catholic meditation and reading and the mystics and so on and so forth. And it just was it was interesting because I think going back to the roots, and I've met a lot of people who had this experience when they've gone back in history and read some of these things that have been written from the early church, that it's actually pointed them, to a liturgy. And
I think it was Cardinal John Henry Newman who said to be deep in history is to cease to be Protestant.
That's right.
You realize the church was Catholic from her very origin. It may have different names for things, but the elements of the Mass and the Magisterium were all there. And the belief in Our Lady and the Trinity and the real presence in the Blessed Sacrament, all of that was believed from the beginning, from the house church all the way to the biggest cathedral. It may have changed outward appearance, but the inward meaning hasn't changed. And so that's wonderful that, in a sense, Mother Teresa was the catalyst that sort of started you moving. I wonder if she was praying for you. Do you think?
It was the funny thing about, kind of curious thing with her is I remember she got my hand and she looked at me and she goes, and she pointed a finger at my face. She goes, I'm going to be praying for you. And I said, well, and I promised to pray for you and for the Missionaries of Charity every day, which I've kept that promise ever since. And in fact, eventually, because I've traveled a lot all my life, I ended up wherever I went, I would track them down and would work with them. And times that I've spent, for example, in Rome, that I had to work on a project and I was there for 3 months, 4 months, whatever. Every day I'd go down, I'd be very close to where they were, and I'd go down and I'd work with them that afternoon. And I've done the same thing in Guatemala and Costa Rica and, Mexico, Japan,
Wow.
all those different places. And being able to, serve alongside of them as well has been, it was just a real joy. And I've gotten really close to some of the people that are, both the brothers and sisters that are there. And it's been funny how sometimes I'll run into somebody in the middle of nowhere in some other country. But so I definitely believe that she had and continues to have a strong influence in my life. In fact, now, of course, every morning when I have my prayers and everything, I always call out to her and I say, remember that you really prayed for me, and it was probably very difficult here on earth, but now you're there, and I'm sure you can do it ways that I don't know.
That's right.
It's me again, and
that's beautiful that you have that relationship with a saint. You had that relationship with a saint that continued to today. I was lucky enough to write her a letter back in the 90s when I was still single, discerning. She sent me to the Bronx because I lived in Long Island at the time. I was looking to go to Guatemala. I wanted something more exotic and help. I was learning Spanish. I'm not Hispanic. My husband is. But I decided to learn Spanish, which did bring me to my husband. But anyway, she sent me to the Bronx. There's plenty of people who speak Spanish there. Oh, okay. Mother Teresa says so. I better go. And I spent a day with the sisters and discerned it wasn't my calling, but what a day. I remember every moment of that day as if it were yesterday. It made that deep an impression on me. And I know they must have been praying for me and Mother all these years. I wish I could find the letter. It's a relic, but I can't. But I know once you've met Mother Teresa in any way, even just a letter, it remains with you. And yet she was someone who suffered the dark night of the soul for 40 years?
Right.
I mean, that really strikes me because whenever I go through dark periods, I remember how long hers lasted and that she never could talk to her mother and sister again. And tremendous suffering throughout her life, yet the grace of God shone through her like a light. So it's wonderful to know that she may have had a spiritual guidance in a way, indirect, but in a way in this entertainment, and I'm sure she would appreciate it. So when are you doing a Mother Teresa film?
Well, she's on my list, and I've been trying to.
I'm sure you've got a long list.
Well, the thing is that what we do, and our studio has grown. I mean, we started maybe 4 or 5 people, we're like 80 some people now in our studio, but it's a very expensive medium. Because and we never work on one project at the same time. We work in about 10 different projects at the same time. We're very busy and we're doing a lot, and we're constantly expanding, and we're expanding again. So oftentimes, whatever we could fund ourselves, of course, we do that. And Brother Francis is like that. We started funding it ourselves because we didn't have anybody else that wanted to get behind it, And so it's grown really through our own efforts, and some of these other projects that we do as well. But the one, actually, the series on the saints that we want to do, in which Mother Teresa and St. Francis are on the top of the list, it's been really hard to be able to get it funded. So we started looking for ways that we can just do it ourselves, until God raises up, maybe some people that have the means to say, hey, how do you want to
hopefully one of them is listening with deep pockets and can help you, or many with shallow pockets. Mother Teresa always says, God has all the money, and I say back, well, okay, God, who's got it, and how do I get it for you? So I hope this show becomes a means of funding for your wonderful projects. I will definitely share it like crazy on social media, and you can do the same, because I heartily endorse what you're doing. I can't wait to get these films from my daughter. I've seen them here and there. Does Brother Francis play in EWTN?
We did a couple of programs that aired there, but we didn't go any further than that. And part of it is because of what we're planning in the future as well, where we're going to be offering a lot of, probably like streaming and all that in the very near future. We have done some things with Formed, and we have done some things with Catholic Brain as well. And in the other places too, like Salt and Light Media and all that. So we've done some things with some of the episodes and some of the movies and all that, but not on like a series, like a regular basis. We kind of kept all that for for stores and things like that, which has done honestly really, really well. It's been tremendous.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that, and I wish you all the best. And I'm so glad that you're out there for my 17-year-old daughter with special needs, for the catechesis that adults, children, adolescents. There's an ongoing need for catechesis among the faithful, and especially for the Catholics that didn't, like you, that were young and inquisitive, and they knew God in a way, but they somehow didn't make the connection that He is in the Mass and He is in the Blessed Sacrament. And that's a very powerful need in the Church. I sense it in many people. So I just pray that through Herald Entertainment that you're able to help people reconnect with Christ that is already there, who is already there, present in their Blessed Sacrament, and love them so much. And just to make that connection in a world where a lot of voices are clamoring to be heard, and a lot of voices can misdirect us.
Yes, that's right.
So Herald is the person that brings good news or brings news, right? The Herald.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And when we first got that name and came up with it, we really didn't know what the future held, but it's been that way we've been doing a lot of stuff over the last 20 years, and I think it's maybe Herald, heralding the good news.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for coming on the Gospel of Life. Give us your website. I'm on it right now. Tell us what your website is so that we can our listeners can go on.
I think your listeners probably be more interested in going to the Brother Francis.
Okay.
Herald Entertainment is really our production website, but Brother Francis would guide them to all the products that we've got. So it's brotherfrancis.com, and if they're interested in calling, they could also call our 1-800 number. It's 1-800-717-2172. It's 1-800-717-2172. And as I said before, we also have most of the stuff we also have in different languages, including Spanish. And there's a lot of material, and it's all really
I could have used that when I was teaching in Spanish instead of translating everything, but that's okay. I'm glad that. And I'm also looking at www.cathocheroesofthefaith.com, and that's for older learners. Yeah. And again, it respects young people's souls, and it doesn't condescend to them. It stimulates their faith and encourages them to learn more. And that's exactly how you do encounter people and how you get people involved. So thank you so much, Robert Fernandez, and it's been a pleasure, and best of luck with your new projects.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Watching.
Okay. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.